Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon and watched the stars through the main window. The ship moved quietly through space toward the Kepler 442 system. Jake had been captain for 5 years, and this was his most important mission. Yet, Earth wanted him to explore new worlds and look for signs of life. The Horizon was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and well-equipped. Jake trusted his crew completely. They had worked together on many missions before. Dr. Lisa Campbell was the best scientist he knew, and she understood alien biology better than anyone else. Engineer Ben Clark could fix anything that broke, and pilot Ryan Parker could fly through an asteroid field with his eyes closed. They had been traveling for 3 months when the sensors picked up something strange. Lisa ran to Jake with the readings, in her hands. Her face was excited but also worried. The numbers showed structures that were too perfect to be natural. Someone or something had built them. Jake called his crew to the bridge. They all looked at the screen showing the 3rd planet in the system. Large metal structures floated in orbit around the world. The buildings were beautiful and seemed to bend light in impossible ways. This was what humans had been searching for since they first left Earth. They had found aliens. Ryan brought the ship closer but stayed far enough away to be safe. The alien structures were huge and clearly showed advanced technology. Jake felt his heart beating fast. This moment would change everything for humanity. He ordered Lisa to start recording everything they saw. The first sign that the aliens knew about them came as a flash of light from one of the orbital stations. Jake thought it might be a weapon, but nothing hit the ship. Instead, a voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect English. The translator technology was so good that it sounded like a human was talking to them. The alien voice was cold and seemed to look down on them. It told Jake to bring his ship to the surface of the nearby moon. The aliens would meet them there to talk. Jake agreed but told his crew to be ready for anything. They had trained for first contact, but this felt different from what they expected. The moon was small and had a thin atmosphere that humans could breathe with help from their suits. Jake took Lisa and Ryan with him down to the surface. Ben stayed on the ship to watch for trouble and keep the engines ready for a quick escape if needed. The alien ship that landed near them was like nothing Jake had ever seen. It made no sound, and seemed to float rather than use engines. The metal looked liquid and changed color as he watched. 3 beings stepped out and walked toward the humans. The aliens were tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. They had 4 arms and moved with perfect grace. Their faces had large eyes but no nose or mouth that Jake could see. When they spoke, the words seemed to come from the air around them rather than from their bodies. The leader stepped forward, and somehow Jake knew this being was in charge. The alien looked at the humans like they were insects that had crawled into his house. It spoke without any emotion in its voice. The being called itself a commander of the Zephyrian military and said humans were young and stupid. Lisa tried to be polite and explain that humans came in peace. She offered to share knowledge and learn from each other. The alien commander seemed amused by her words. It told them that humans were too primitive to understand real knowledge and should go back to their own small corner of space. Jake felt anger building inside him, but he kept his voice calm. He explained that humans had traveled far to meet other, intelligent life and wanted to be friends. The commander made a sound that might have been laughter. It said friendship was only possible between equals, and humans were clearly not equal to Zephyrians. The conversation became worse when the commander explained the Zephyrian view of the galaxy. They believed that space belonged only to advanced species and humans were not advanced enough to leave their home system. The commander ordered Jake to take this message back to Earth. All human expansion beyond the solar system must stop immediately. Jake could not believe what he was hearing. The aliens were demanding that humanity give up 17 colonies and millions of people. They wanted humans to trap themselves around Earth forever. When Jake said this was impossible, the commander became angry. The alien pointed one of its 4 arms at the sky. A small moon orbiting the planet suddenly turned to dust and scattered into space. The demonstration of power was clear and terrifying. The Zephyrians could destroy worlds as easily as humans could break a stone. The commander gave Jake 1 Earth year to convince his people to obey. If humans refused to leave the other star systems, all human worlds would be destroyed. Every man, Woman and child would die unless they returned to Earth and stayed there forever. The aliens would come back in exactly 1 year to see if humans had obeyed. Jake wanted to argue more, but the aliens walked back to their ship without another word. The liquid metal craft rose silently into the sky and disappeared. Jake and his crew were left standing alone on the empty moon, wondering if they had just sealed the fate of their entire species. The trip back to Earth felt like the longest journey of Jake's life. He knew that billions of people were depending on what happened next. The aliens had shown they could destroy anything humans had built, but Jake also knew that humanity would never agree to live as prisoners in their own solar system. War was coming, and Jake was not sure his species could win. The Zephyrian fleet appeared exactly 1 year after their first meeting with humans. Jake Morrison watched from his command ship as thousands of alien vessels emerged from hyperspace around the outer colonies. The sight made his blood run cold, but he was not surprised. Humanity had spent the entire year preparing for this moment. The alien ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They moved through space like living things with hulls that seemed to flow and change shape. Energy weapons glowed along their sides and defensive shields sparkled around each vessel. The fleet was enormous and clearly meant to crush any resistance quickly. Commander Ryan Parker stood on the bridge of his destroyer at New Geneva Colony when the attack began. The orbital defense platforms opened fire, first sending streams of energy toward the approaching alien ships. The Zephyrian shields absorbed the blasts easily, and their return fire turned the platforms into clouds of glowing metal. Ryan had expected this result, and was ready with his real plan. Hidden launchers across the planet's surface suddenly came to life. Thousands of simple metal projectiles shot up from the ground, moving at incredible speeds. The alien commanders had not expected such primitive weapons, and their shields were not designed to stop solid objects. The kinetic rounds punched through Zephyrian hulls like bullets through paper. Several alien ships exploded immediately while others lost power and began spinning out of control. The surviving vessels tried to target the ground launchers, but Ryan had hidden them well, and there were too many to destroy quickly. Captain Nina Brooks commanded a small fleet of converted cargo ships near Wolf 359. Her vessels looked harmless, but carried nuclear warheads and kamikaze pilots willing to die for humanity. Nina waited until the alien ships came close before revealing her trap. Her ships suddenly accelerated toward the enemy fleet at maximum speed. The Zephyrians fired their energy weapons and destroyed several human vessels, but Nina's crews had expected heavy losses. The surviving ships reached the alien formation and detonated their nuclear payloads at point-blank range. The explosions tore through the Zephyrian fleet like a chainsaw through wood. The aliens had never faced enemies, willing to sacrifice themselves to cause damage. Their tactical computers could not calculate responses to such irrational behavior. Dozens of advanced alien ships died in the nuclear firestorm. Dr. Alex Rodriguez watched the battle reports from his laboratory on Mars. His experimental weapons were performing even better than he had hoped. The chaos generators confused alien targeting systems while kinetic harpoons ripped through their hulls. The electromagnetic pulse bombs disabled their advanced electronics, leaving them helpless. Alex realized that the aliens had become too dependent on their technology. When their systems failed, they seemed unable to fight effectively. Human weapons were cruder but more reliable. A simple metal slug would work the same way whether enemy jamming was present or not. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos led her troops in ground combat on Europa. The aliens had landed forces to capture the mining facilities, but they found the human defenders ready and waiting. Maria had turned the entire moon into a maze of tunnels and bunkers connected by hidden passages. The Zephyrian soldiers were tall and graceful, but they fought like machines following predetermined patterns. Maria's troops used guerrilla tactics learned from centuries of human warfare. They appeared from unexpected directions, struck hard, and disappeared before the aliens could respond effectively. The alien infantry weapons were powerful, but designed for formal battles between organized armies. They struggled against human fighters, who hid behind cover and used the environment to their advantage. Maria's forces captured alien equipment and learned to use it against its creators. Engineer Ben Clark's modifications to human ships proved crucial in several battles. Converted merchant vessels rammed alien cruisers, while passenger liners launched swarms of guided missiles. The Zephyrians had expected to fight warships, not flying bombs disguised as civilian craft. Ben also discovered weaknesses in alien ship design during salvage operations. The enemy vessels were fast and powerful, but not built to take damage. Human ships were tougher and could keep fighting even after suffering serious hits. This difference became important in long battles where endurance mattered more than firepower. Admiral Patricia Hayes coordinated the overall defense from her flagship near Earth. She watched as her unconventional strategies confused and frustrated the alien commanders. The Zephyrians kept trying to fight formal space battles while humans used every dirty trick they could imagine. Patricia realized that the aliens were not used to facing determined resistance. Their previous conquests had probably involved species that surrendered quickly when faced with superior technology. Humans refused to give up even when victory seemed impossible, and this stubbornness was driving the enemy to make mistakes. The war's first phase lasted 6 months with battles raging across 17 star systems simultaneously. The aliens won most individual engagements, but their losses were much higher than expected. Human forces learned from each defeat and adapted their tactics constantly. Jake Morrison participated in the defense of Alpha Centauri, where his exploration ship had been converted into a missile platform. He watched young pilots ram their fighters into alien dreadnoughts while infantry units fought desperate battles on colony worlds. The courage of ordinary humans facing impossible odds inspired him. The Zephyrians began changing their tactics as the war progressed. They started avoiding close combat and tried to destroy human worlds from long range. However, this approach gave human forces time to evacuate civilians and prepare stronger defenses. Dr. Lisa Campbell worked with intelligence teams to analyze captured alien technology and prisoners. She discovered that Zephyrian society was rigidly hierarchical, with soldiers who followed orders without question. When their command structure was disrupted, they became confused and ineffective. Lisa also learned that the aliens viewed war as a precise science, with rules and procedures that must be followed. Human unpredictability violated everything they understood about combat. The Zephyrians could not adapt quickly to new situations because their culture discouraged individual initiative. As the first year of fighting ended, both sides had learned hard lessons. The aliens discovered that advanced technology alone could not guarantee victory against a determined enemy. Humans learned that courage and creativity could overcome seemingly impossible odds, but the price in blood was terrible. The war was far from over, but humanity had survived the initial assault. More importantly, they had proven to themselves and their enemies that they would never surrender, no matter how hopeless the situation appeared to be. The emergency meeting at Earth's capital lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Representatives from every human colony sat around the huge table arguing about what to do. Some wanted to fight, and others wanted to surrender to the aliens. The shouting got so loud that guards had to keep people from attacking each other. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched the politicians fight and felt sick to her stomach. She had spent 30 years protecting human colonies from pirates and natural disasters. Now she faced an enemy that could turn moons into dust with a single weapon. The Admiral knew that talking would not solve this problem. When the President asked for her opinion, Patricia stood up slowly. The room became quiet as everyone turned to look at her. She had gray hair and scars on her face from old battles. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel underneath her words. Patricia told them that surrender meant the death of human civilization. The aliens would keep humans trapped around Earth like animals in a cage. Future generations would never see the stars or build new worlds. She said fighting might mean death, but surrender definitely meant the end of everything humans had worked to build. Dr. Alex Rodriguez raised his hand from the back of the room. Most people did not know him because he worked on secret military projects. Alex was young and thin with wild hair that he never combed. He looked nervous, but his voice was steady when he spoke. Alex explained that human technology was different from what the aliens used. The Zephyrians had advanced energy weapons and shields, but they seemed to have forgotten about simpler methods of war. Humans still used bullets and bombs and nuclear missiles. These old weapons might work better against aliens than anyone expected. The room erupted in arguments again. Many people said Alex was crazy to think primitive weapons could defeat advanced aliens. Others pointed out that the Zephyrians had easily destroyed a moon and would laugh at human guns. Alex waited for them to quiet down before explaining his plan. He told them about kinetic weapons that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. These simple projectiles could punch through almost anything if they moved fast enough. The alien shields were designed to stop energy beams, not solid objects. Alex also talked about nuclear weapons and chemical explosives that the aliens might not expect. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos had been listening quietly in the corner. She was small and looked young, but everyone knew she was the best soldier in the human military. Maria had fought in the colony wars and understood how to win against stronger enemies. Maria stood up and supported Alex's ideas. She explained that humans had always been good at irregular warfare. When facing superior forces, humans used surprise attacks, hit-and-run tactics, and psychological warfare. The aliens expected a formal battle, but humans could fight dirty. She talked about turning every colony into a fortress and training civilians to fight. Human ships could be converted into weapons, and industrial facilities could mass-produce ammunition. Maria believed that human creativity and stubbornness could make up for their lack of advanced technology. Engineer Ben Clark had returned from the first contact mission with Jake Morrison. Ben was practical and understood how things worked. He raised concerns about facing an enemy with such advanced technology. The alien ships could move faster than anything humans had built. Ben suggested that humans needed to retrofit their existing ships with new weapons quickly. He proposed mounting railguns and missile launchers on cargo vessels and passenger ships. Every human spacecraft could become a warship if necessary. The aliens would not expect merchant ships to fight back. The debate continued for hours, but slowly the mood in the room changed. People began to understand that surrender was not really an option. The Zephyrians would never treat humans as equals. They saw humanity as pests that needed to be controlled or eliminated. President Helen Carter finally called for a vote. She was old and had led Earth through many crises. Helen knew this decision would define her legacy and possibly end human civilization. The choice was simple but terrible. Fight and maybe die, or surrender and definitely lose everything. The vote was close, but the result was clear. Humanity would not surrender to the aliens. Every colony would prepare for war, and every human would contribute to the defense of their species. Admiral Hayes was given complete authority to organize the military response. Patricia immediately began issuing orders to commanders throughout human space. Every ship in the fleet was recalled for modifications. Civilian factories were converted to produce weapons and ammunition. Scientists were pulled from their normal research to work on military projects. Alex Rodriguez was given unlimited resources to develop new weapons based on his theories. He worked around the clock with teams of engineers and physicists. They designed railguns that could fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. They also created nuclear warheads that could be guided by simple computer systems. Maria Santos traveled to each colony to train their defenders. She taught soldiers and civilians how to fight against technologically superior enemies. Her lessons focused on mobility, surprise, and the willingness to take heavy casualties to inflict damage on the enemy. Ben Clark coordinated the massive project of modifying human spacecraft. Cargo ships received armor plating and weapon systems. Passenger liners were converted into troop transports and hospital ships. Even small personal craft were equipped with missiles and communication equipment. The work proceeded at a frantic pace as the year deadline approached. Human space became a hive of activity as billions of people prepared for war. Children learned to operate weapons and elderly citizens worked in ammunition factories. Everyone understood that defeat meant the end of their way of life. As the months passed, human confidence began to grow. The weapons Alex designed performed better than expected in tests. Maria's training programs created effective fighting units on every world. Ben's ship modifications turned the civilian fleet into a credible military force. The aliens had given humanity 1 year to surrender, but instead that year became a time of preparation and determination. When the Zephyrians returned, they would find not a defeated species begging for mercy, but a united civilization ready to fight for its survival. The war had been going on for 18 months when Dr. Lisa Campbell made her most important discovery. She was studying captured Zephyrian technology in her laboratory when she noticed something strange about how the alien systems worked. Every piece of equipment followed the same basic design principles that had not changed in thousands of years. Lisa realized that Zephyrian civilization had become stagnant. They had reached a high level of technology and then stopped innovating. Their weapons and ships were powerful, but they were also predictable. Once humans understood the patterns, they could find ways to counter them. She shared her findings with Dr. Alex Rodriguez, who immediately saw the implications. If the aliens could not adapt quickly, then humans could stay ahead of them by constantly changing tactics. Alex began developing new weapons every few weeks, specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian defenses. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos used Lisa's research to revolutionize human military strategy. Instead of trying to match alien technology, she focused on doing things the enemy would never expect. Maria's forces began using captured alien equipment in ways its creators had never imagined. Her most successful operation involved turning Zephyrian transport ships into guided missiles. The aliens had programmed their own vessels to recognize friendly signals and allow them to pass through defensive screens. Maria's teams captured several transports and loaded them with nuclear warheads before sending them back to alien fleets. The Zephyrians could not understand why their own ships were attacking them. Their rigid thinking made it impossible for them to quickly develop countermeasures. By the time they figured out what was happening, Maria had already moved on to new tactics. Engineer. Ben Clark had been working on a secret project that would change the entire war. He called it the Automated Production Network, and it was designed to solve humanity's biggest problem. Human forces could win individual battles, but they could not replace losses as quickly as needed. Ben's system used robotic mining ships to gather raw materials from asteroid belts and convert them into weapons and ammunition. The production facilities could be hidden in empty space where the aliens would never find them. As long as humans controlled the asteroid belts, they could keep fighting indefinitely. The first automated factories came online during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Human forces there had been nearly defeated when supply ships began arriving, with fresh weapons and reinforcements. The alien commanders could not understand where the humans were getting unlimited resources. Admiral Patricia Hayes realized that the war had reached a turning point. Zephyrian forces were still powerful, but they were no longer advancing on all fronts. Some alien fleets had begun retreating from systems they had conquered earlier. For the first time since the war began, humans were not just surviving but actually winning battles. Patricia decided it was time for humanity's most ambitious operation yet. She would turn the defense of Mars into a trap that would cripple the alien fleet. The plan was dangerous and would require sacrificing the planet's civilian population, but it might end the war. General Kevin Wright took command of the Mars operation. He was a tough old soldier who had fought in every major human conflict of the past 20 years. Kevin understood that desperate times required desperate measures, and he was willing to do whatever it took to save humanity. Kevin began evacuating non-essential personnel from Mars while secretly turning the planet into a massive weapon. Mining tunnels were filled with nuclear explosives while the orbital shipyards were converted into automated gun platforms. Every dome and settlement became a fortress ready to explode when the aliens arrived. The Zephyrian fleet that approached. Mars was huge even by alien standards. Intelligence reports suggested it contained nearly 3,000 ships, including some of their most powerful dreadnoughts. The enemy commanders expected an easy victory that would break human resistance once and for all. Jake Morrison commanded one of the human ships defending Mars orbit. He knew the real plan and understood that most of his fleet would not survive. The battle. The defense was designed to look convincing while drawing the aliens into Kevin's trap. The battle began with a massive alien bombardment that destroyed the outer defensive platforms. Human ships fought back desperately but were clearly outmatched. Slowly and convincingly, the human fleet began to retreat toward Mars, leaving the planet seemingly defenseless. The Zephyrian fleet moved closer to begin the final assault on Mars. Their ships spread out in standard formation, preparing to reduce the planet to rubble. The alien commanders were probably already celebrating their victory when Kevin triggered his surprise. Mars exploded. Not literally, but thousands of hidden weapons fired simultaneously from across the planet's surface. Nuclear mines detonated in space while railgun batteries sent streams of projectiles into the alien fleet. Automated missile launchers filled the void with guided warheads. The aliens had never faced anything like Kevin's trap. Their ships were caught in a crossfire that came from every direction at once. Even their advanced shields could not protect them from the massive coordinated attack. Entire sections of the Zephyrian fleet simply disintegrated. Captain Nina Brooks led a group of converted cargo ships in the final phase of the Mars battle. While the aliens were dealing with the planet-based weapons her vessels attacked from, behind using nuclear ramming tactics. The enemy formation collapsed completely under the multiple simultaneous assaults. Dr. Alex Rodriguez watched the battle from his command center and felt amazed by what humans had accomplished. 18 months earlier, the Zephyrians had seemed invincible. Now their most powerful fleet was retreating in disorder after losing more than half its ships to primitive human weapons. The victory at Mars changed everything about the war. Alien forces began withdrawing from multiple systems as their commanders lost confidence in their ability to defeat humanity. For the first time, Zephyrian politicians started questioning whether the war was worth continuing. Maria Santos received reports that alien ground forces were abandoning several colony worlds without even fighting. The enemy soldiers seemed demoralized and confused by their recent defeats. Some Zephyrian units had even surrendered rather than face human defenders. Ben Clark's automated production network was now operating at full capacity. New weapons and ships were being manufactured faster than the aliens could destroy them. Human industrial capacity had grown beyond anything the Zephyrians could match with their stagnant technology. Lisa Campbell intercepted alien communications that revealed growing dissent within Zephyrian society. Different factions were blaming each other for the military failures while their rigid government struggled to adapt to changing circumstances. The enemy was not just losing the war, but falling apart internally. As the second year of fighting ended, humanity found itself in an unbelievable position. They were not just surviving, but actually winning against a technologically superior enemy. The species that had seemed doomed 18 months earlier was now driving the aliens back across multiple star systems. Patricia Hayes began planning offensive operations to retake conquered human worlds. The admiral who had once worried about simple survival was now thinking about how to win a complete victory. The war was far from over, but for the first time humans could see a path to triumph. The final phase of the war lasted only 3 months, but it changed both species forever. Admiral Patricia Hayes led the largest human fleet in history as they pursued retreating Zephyrian forces toward the alien home system. What they discovered there would haunt humanity for generations to come. The chase began when alien forces started abandoning their forward positions without explanation. Human intelligence reported that entire Zephyrian fleets were fleeing deeper into their own territory. Patricia realized this might be humanity's only chance to end the war permanently, by striking at the enemy's heart. Jake Morrison commanded one of the pursuit squadrons following the alien retreat. His ships detected massive energy signatures coming from Zephyrian space, suggesting the enemy was preparing for a final desperate battle. Jake expected to find their home system turned into an impregnable fortress. Instead, he found chaos. When the human fleet arrived at the edge of Zephyrian space, they encountered something nobody had expected. Alien ships were fleeing in all directions with no apparent coordination or purpose. Some vessels were attacking each other while others simply drifted powerless through space. Dr. Lisa Campbell monitored alien communications and discovered the truth behind their strange behavior. Zephyrian society was collapsing from within as different factions blamed each other for the military disaster. Their rigid hierarchical system could not handle the psychological impact of defeat. The aliens had built their entire civilization around the belief that they were superior to all other species. When primitive humans proved capable of defeating them, this fundamental assumption shattered like glass. Zephyrian leaders were fighting civil wars while their people lost faith. in everything they had believed. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos led ground forces that landed on abandoned alien worlds. What her troops found there was disturbing and sad. Entire cities had been evacuated so quickly that meals were still sitting on tables. The aliens had simply run away from everything they had built. Maria's forces also discovered the reason behind the Zephyrian collapse. Hidden in their archives were records showing that the aliens had not faced serious military resistance in over 10,000 years. Every species they encountered had either submitted immediately or been destroyed easily. The Zephyrians had forgotten how to deal with determined enemies who refused to surrender. Their military doctrine assumed that superior technology would always guarantee victory. When this failed, they had no backup plans and no experience with prolonged warfare. Dr. Alex Rodriguez made an even more disturbing discovery while examining captured alien technology. The Zephyrian weapons and ships required a rare element that could only be found in their home system. The war with humanity had exhausted their strategic reserves of this critical material. Without this element, their advanced technology gradually stopped working. Alien ships lost power and weapons became useless. The Zephyrians had built their entire civilization around resources that were now running out. They faced technological collapse, even if the war ended immediately. Engineer Ben Clark accompanied the fleet deeper into alien territory, searching for signs of organized resistance. Instead, his teams found massive evacuation ships preparing to leave the galaxy entirely. The Zephyrians were abandoning their entire civilization rather than continue fighting humanity. Ben managed to intercept some of the fleeing vessels and discovered their destination. The aliens were heading for the intergalactic void where they planned to enter suspended animation until human civilization eventually collapsed. They preferred exile to admitting defeat. Captain Nina Brooks led the final assault on the Zephyrian homeworld, expecting a desperate last stand. Her ships found the planet completely deserted, except for automated systems broadcasting surrender messages. The aliens had abandoned their capital without firing a single shot. The empty alien cities were beautiful but haunting. Advanced technology lay scattered everywhere like toys abandoned by frightened children. Nina's forces found no signs of recent habitation and no clues about where the population had gone. General Kevin Wright established a command post on the alien homeworld and tried to make sense of what had happened. The Zephyrians had possessed technology that could destroy stars, but they had been psychologically unprepared for defeat. Their entire species had suffered a collective nervous breakdown. Patricia Hayes stood in the abandoned alien parliament building and felt no joy in her victory. Humanity had won the war, but the cost had been terrible for both sides. Millions of humans had died and an entire alien civilization had chosen exile rather than coexistence. Jake Morrison explored the empty alien space stations and wondered if humanity had become the monsters in this story. They had fought to defend themselves, but their success had driven another species to the edge of extinction. The moral implications would trouble him for the rest of his life. Lisa Campbell studied the abandoned alien archives and learned about Zephyrian history. They had once been explorers and scientists like humans, but millennia of easy conquests had made them arrogant and inflexible. Their defeat by humanity was inevitable once they met a species willing to fight back. The war officially ended when the last Zephyrian evacuation ships disappeared into deep space. Humanity controlled 17 star systems plus all the territory the aliens had abandoned. They were now the dominant species in this region of the galaxy. Alex Rodriguez continued his research using captured alien technology to improve human science. However, he also worked on defensive measures in case the Zephyrians ever returned. The aliens might spend centuries or millennia preparing for revenge. Maria Santos helped establish security forces to patrol the former alien territory. Her troops found scattered groups of Zephyrians who had chosen to stay behind, but these individuals seemed broken and defeated. They posed no threat to human expansion. Ben Clark supervised the conversion of alien industrial facilities to serve human needs. The abandoned technology was incredibly advanced, but much of it stopped working without the rare elements the aliens had exhausted. Humans would have to find their own path to the stars. Patricia Hayes returned to Earth as a hero, but she carried the weight of what humanity had accomplished. They had proven themselves capable of defeating any enemy, but they had also destroyed a civilization that was thousands of years older than their own. The victory celebration was muted because everyone understood what they had become. Humans were no longer the innocent explorers who had first encountered the Zephyrians. They were battle-hardened survivors who had fought the most powerful species in the galaxy and won. Years later, Jake Morrison would stand on the bridge of his ship, looking out at stars that now belonged to humanity. Somewhere in the cosmic darkness, the Zephyrians were waiting and planning their return. The war was over, but the larger conflict between the species would continue for generations. The aliens had vanished after facing humans, but they had not been destroyed. They had simply chosen a different kind of defeat that left both species forever changed by their encounter among the stars.